Welcome to the Average Joe Jiu-Jitsu podcast, which is your source for information for the average Jiu-Jitsu hobbyist or competitor at any age or lifestyle. Remember to please share, like, comment, and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. This is episode 20, again with Josh Settlage. Joshua visited us in episode 6. We had a great conversation. If you haven't listened to it already, I highly recommend that you go back and listen to it. There's a ton of good information in it. I listened to it again actually yesterday, and I started taking notes again. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I just sort of slipped my mind or I had forgotten about, but they were great points, and they're going to go right back into my program. If you're not familiar with Josh is the BJJ strength coach. He's helping grappling athletes win more matches and get injured less. And he has a great YouTube channel called the BJJ Strength Coach. And we're here today to talk about his new internet service, which is the Strength Matrix. Josh, welcome to the podcast again. Thanks for coming in and talking to me. And how you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Craig. I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this ever since the last time I was on the podcast. We said we would definitely do this again. And even anytime we have a chance to chat over Instagram or email back and forth, it's always a pleasure. So I'm glad we're actually able to do it on Zoom this time.
Awesome. Yeah, it is. It's always fun to talk to you. We talk a lot on Instagram and what have you, and we've kept in touch the whole time, and it's been good. And I'm always impressed by the amount of information you put out. You put out a lot of good content. And your Instagram is awesome. Your YouTube channel is really good. It's inspirational. I always want to go train at Super Training every time I watch it. I'm always like, damn, I wish I was closer to like Roseville or Sacramento.
Yeah, we have a pretty good squad in the morning at Super Training Gym, which keeps things interesting and fun, makes for good YouTube content.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, especially like one thing I'm really jealous about is the fact that you guys get to pull sleds indoors as opposed to out in the cold. I have to do it out in the cold, and it's like, I'll admit that sometimes I'm a pussy and I don't want to do it, and I just skip it because I don't want to go out in the cold. But that's my personal problem. So what is the Strength Matrix? You have a new program coming out, the Strength Matrix, which is an internet service, and is dropping on January 1st of this year, of 2022. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So the Strength Matrix has been something that has really been what I needed when I wrestled in high school, and what I needed those first couple of years of doing jiu-jitsu. And at least the time that I got started in wrestling, there were a few people in the industry that were great resources for strength and conditioning material for grappling athletes. But I was so young at the time that I loved learning about strength and conditioning, and I loved learning about training programs and mesocycles and, rate of force development and all that stuff. But none of my teammates, they could not care less about any of those things. And when they would try to start finding ways to get stronger or improve their conditioning, they would go online and they'd find a lot of traditional football programs. And if you know anything about wrestling, it is definitely nothing like football. So, and that led to a lot of issues with myself and a lot of my teammates, is that we just didn't have a good resource for strength and conditioning. We didn't have a good resource for training programs that understood the demands of what it's like to be a wrestling athlete. And, same thing when I first started jiu-jitsu, there weren't a lot of great resources out there that I could constantly look to as like, okay, this training program was designed by someone who actually understands what it's like to wrestle 5-6 days a week. They actually understand what it's like to be in one of those high intensity pressure cooker wrestling rooms. And on the other end, this, program was written by someone who actually understands what's important in jiu-jitsu, and also understands that there's a million different body types that will allow you to be successful in jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of different games that will allow you to be successful in jiu-jitsu. And so as I started kind of working my way through wrestling and starting jiu-jitsu and really diving into my love for strength and conditioning, I realized that I was quickly becoming a resource to all of my training partners to help them out and being able to get stronger so that they could win more matches and get injured less. And so after the last 4 years of running my company, Settlage Strength, I'm so thankful that now I'm in a place where I've been able to compile a lot of that information and design these really well-constructed elite level training programs for jiu-jitsu and wrestling athletes. So that way they can just pull open their phone, They don't need to worry about it being written by some guy that doesn't know what a 2-point takedown is, that doesn't know what a guard pass is. It's written by someone who understands the sport, who understands the needs of the athlete, and is able to effectively program sound strength and conditioning training programs for them that's going to allow them to be successful on the mat while still getting stronger, still improving their conditioning, making sure their mobility is intact so they can decrease injury while not taking away from any of their mat time. And as someone who's been in the game as long as yourself, Craig, I know that you understand this as well. There's so many great powerlifting and bodybuilding, and you know, I kind of dogged on football a little bit, but there's some great football strength and conditioning training programs. But sometimes those training programs, because they're not specifically designed for wrestling or jiu-jitsu, they end up taking away from our ability to perform well on the mat, whether you're a wrestling athlete or a jiu-jitsu athlete. And if that happens, that is the last nail in the coffin, and your performance is going to suffer. So my goal in designing the strength matrix was to create a one-stop shop for no BS training resources for strength and conditioning or for jiu-jitsu and wrestling athletes from a strength and conditioning perspective. That way they can follow these training programs. They can follow the bracket smasher program when they're prepping for competition. If they're in an off season, they can follow Matt Jacked and build more muscle. They can follow Matt Strong and improve their strength development and power output. If they want to focus on conditioning, they can hit the overtime program, which isn't going to take away from their strength development. They can follow all these various programs while still being able to go on the mat and train hard and continue making progress on the mat. So that's essentially what the strength matrix is. It's something that's been a labor of love for the past decade of my life as I've been experiencing and studying and researching all of these things. And over this last year, I've been working on building out the ultimate resource for grappling athletes to help them win more matches and get injured less.
It sounds awesome. You know, one thing about the football part that popped in my head while you were saying it, and I hope everybody understands, I didn't play football. I just have an outside observation or limited knowledge of it. But I think that, isn't it true that football players, when they do strength training, it's an off-season activity. It's mainly like they really hit it hard in the off season when they're not playing. And then when they do play, it's more of a maintenance, barely lifting at all kind of thing. And so it really isn't the same as what will be used for BJJ. I mean, if BJJ competitor get people that are competing a lot, that's where the conjugate method is a much better option, where you're hitting all these different types of modalities all the time. So you're never really having to go through a periodization type program where you're peaking at different points of the year, et cetera. You still will peak. I mean, obviously you know more about this than I do. And there are programs for peaking involved in what you do as well. But for the general purposes and the average, the average hobbyist, average competitor, I think the conjugate's the way to go. It sort of hits everything all the time,
Absolutely, man. And you've seen it too. There are guys that, because there's no quote unquote structured jiu-jitsu season, they could literally compete every single weekend. Both of us, we live in two different parts of California, but in kind of both areas of where we live, it is so easy for anyone to compete literally every single weekend. Absolutely. 52 weeks out of the year, maybe take Christmas Day off. But when you have a sport that's like that and there's no limit on how much you can do, that's great. But it's also, it's a blessing and a curse, because that means that there's a lot of systemic fatigue that accumulates. And we've seen it happen, unfortunately, with some of our teammates and guys that we know personally, where they experience that burnout, or all the injuries catch up to them and it's too little too late. And now they're just limited to, the little bit of rolling that they can do. And so if a jiu-jitsu athlete is able to enter the strength matrix and start to begin to understand, okay, how am I going to structure 2022? These are the big competitions that I want to do. I need to make sure that I'm not just faster and better conditioned, but I also need to make sure that I'm physically durable enough. I mean, we're both literally in sports that are designed to do the opposite of what the body is designed to do. We're designed to restrict blood flow to the brain, restrict air intake, bend limbs in the complete opposite direction. So your body needs to definitely be durable to withstand all of those things. And because we don't have a structured season like football, like soccer, like baseball, that can get a little bit difficult sometimes.
Yeah, even for guys like me, like it doesn't even have to be a competitor. I mean, you could just be a guy who trains 5-6 days a week like I do, and you want to train as much as you possibly can. And you know what? I don't care what anybody says. When people say, "Oh, well, let's roll light," nobody rolls light. That doesn't exist. Yeah, that does not exist. So it's like, I had a guy actually say that to me a couple of weeks ago. Oh, it was like the last round, And he's like, oh, come on, we'll do a light one. I said, okay, whatever. It was not light. There was nothing light about it, you know, and it never is. So, but it's just an understanding. It's like I always think that's like a joke, you know, let's roll light. It means we're going to go hard as hell, you know?
Yeah.
But,
that it has been something that I'll be honest, that I've been trying to tell the athletes that I work with, like, especially on those big open mat days and now during the holidays, I have noticed that I see more people get injured during open mat time than any other time throughout the year. So whether that's Memorial Day, 4th of July, or whether that's kind of all those open mats that happen back to back, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. And a lot of times it's because everyone's going to that one open mat. So maybe you see some homies that you haven't seen in a while because you guys are missing classes, and nobody does the structured warm up before open mat. You just show up and they're like, oh, let's do this first one light. And maybe like 45 seconds at the very most is light. And then it's DEFCON 10, balls to the wall training. And usually that's when the injuries start to pop up.
Yeah. I mean, there are absolutely. And I will 1000% agree with you. I mean, there are people that I train with that are like black belts or, you know, even, yeah, I don't think there are any brown belts, but black belts that I really enjoy training because they will actually go lighter with you and they will read that, or, you know, they can actually, you know, flow or whatever. And it's fun. I enjoy doing both. And I really do like to be able to flow. And I think I have the ability to do it. It's just, you don't find too many people who actually do it. You know, it's like, they just don't know how to do it. And so they just go hard. But yeah, I agree with you. A lot of injuries that way. But yeah, I mean, I guess the point of what we were saying is, though, you want to find a way to do this to keep yourself in one piece and hit all the modalities all the time, because there's really no season. So yeah, so like you said, like I don't know what a football strength and conditioning program looks like. I assume from, again, my limited knowledge, it's like the Columbine thing, like deadlifting, benching, sprints. I don't know what else they do, but I would think that it's different.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned is pretty typical. Earlier this year, I read a really good book that I think you would enjoy. It's a pretty quick read too, but it's just jam-packed with information, and it is specific to football. But I think the underlying principles, any athlete of any sport, field sport, mat sport, you know, any athlete could benefit from. But it's called the Strength Coach's Handbook by Joe Ken. If you're not familiar with Joe Ken, he is, you know, Mark Bell has a famous quote where he says, all roads lead to Coach House. And Coach House that's Joe Ken's pseudonym. He's super big, super freaking strong. And his athletes would call him Coach House. He was the head strength and conditioning coach for the Carolina Panthers the year they won the Super Bowl. And so in his book, he kind of lays out his structure of training for his college and pro football athletes. And yeah, there's a lot of deadlifting. There's quite a few big squat days, some sprinting, power cleans, all that good stuff. But it was just really interesting the way he laid and structured everything out. So, you know, we have conversations about programming all the time. So for someone like yourself, I'm sure you'd dig that read. Yeah,
that'd be interesting. Yeah. I mean, I personally, when I hear Olympic lift, I go, you know, I'm like, I'm not doing Olympic lifts anymore. But it's just, I think Olympic lifts, and at least for my purposes or the people that would probably listen to my podcast, it's too technical, takes too much time to learn how to do it. It's too much risk of injury. You know, if you're looking to go, you know, quicker, you can just use, like, I just like doing dynamic effort, just basic squat, deadlift, you know, plyometrics, you know, things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think Olympic lifts are cool, but not for me. I don't think that I should do them.
I'm with you there, bro. It's hard to they're kind of on this continuum of awesome exercise, but the juice isn't always worth the squeeze. You know, you look at these Olympic lifters, the top Olympic lifters in the nation, they're super explosive. They're super fast. And then, you know, looking at that, everyone thinks like, oh, snatch and clean and jerk. That might be the way. That's what every athlete should do. And then you ask them, it's like, well, I've been doing this since I was 10. And it took me 15 years to build up to this level of proficiency with this particular style of training. And soccer athletes, jiu-jitsu athletes, football athletes, wrestlers, they don't always have that kind of time or that kind of energy and dedication to pull away from their sport to get good at two lifts.
Correct. And the Olympic lifts themselves are a sport. They are a barbell sport. So they have specific lifts and specific technique, and it's not something that is easy to learn. Actually, one of my oldest daughter's friends, her really good friend, her brother is a competitive Olympic lifter, and I've seen I've seen videos. He's a beast. He's strong.
That's awesome.
Very, very, very impressive. But again, it's just, and it's even, you can even say that about powerlifting to a degree. The idea that powerlifting is a barbell sport. You use a straight bar, you bench, you squat, you deadlift, and you don't necessarily have to do those things to run these type of programs. Like even we talked about last time, the 5 major lifts that you recommended. I like them too. Like Zercher squats, and ready to have a front squat, a floor press, which I've been going crazy with lately. Z press, bent over rows. Those things are probably better options for a grappling athlete.
Absolutely.
And it keeps things fresh, and I don't get bored just do benching and squatting. It's boring. I've been doing it for so many years.
I'm with you there, bro. I'm with you there.
So many decades of that. And I'm just like, okay, I'm sick of doing this. I don't want to do this anymore. So like I did box squats last night with my SSB bar, and I'll probably do one more week of that, maybe not. Or the next squat, I'll probably need to start doing Zerchers again. And I want to start playing around with like sumo deadlifts. So I haven't done those very often. Do some deficits, just some different stuff like that. I don't know. That's just part of it for me. It's like I lift for jiu-jitsu, but I also lift just because I enjoy it. And I want to keep it fun. And that's what makes it interesting to me, is just switching it up. And I guess that's one of the things with the conjugate method that I like. You get to do a lot of variety. So talking about the conjugate, how I know that you do a 3-day split, and I've been using the same split, which is basically, I reversed it on accident. You're supposed to do lower body max effort and upper body dynamic effort on day 1. I actually do that day 2. And then the next day would be, the reverse of that. So what did I say? So if you're doing your way, it's lower, upper, it's dynamic, max effort, upper, dynamic, lower. And then Wednesday would be, if that was on Monday, then Wednesday would be max effort, upper, and dynamic, lower. And then the third day on Friday would be your accessory work, your jack and
correct.
And so I've been doing that, and I actually really like it. It's working really well for me. Yeah, it is. It's an honest, free plug. It is actually working very well for my recovery.
That's great.
So, but one thing I had a question about was how do you structure? Do you do like a 3-day wave of the same exercise? Or like the squat, like I've been doing 2 weeks, I've done the box squat, and I've changed it slightly. Like I used a higher pad last night. The week before that, I didn't use a pad at all. I just went to the box. So do you do it that way, where you change something slightly for 3 weeks? Or do you do like 1 week it's a squat, the next week is the deadlift, and then alternating?
Yeah. So with that 3-day condensed conjugate split, I've played around with a lot of different things. I've ran it a couple ways where I've done 3 weeks of essentially the same type of training session. Just adding a little bit more volume to a couple sets over here, or adding a form of accommodating resistance each week over here. So for that first time that I was running through it, it would look like max effort lower would always be some sort of squat for those 3 weeks. Max effort upper would always be some form of horizontal press for those 3 weeks. And that was great. And that was good because, at that time I was really trying to push my floor press up. And then other times when I was really focused on my deadlift, every week was some sort of max effort hip hinge or deadlift variation. I'd run that for a few training cycles. But now with the way, my guys, the AM crew, the way we're all training is almost everybody is in comp prep. So we can't just only get super good and gangster out on our squat. We have to be proficient in our hip hinging movements. We have to be proficient in horizontal and vertical pressing. So what we do, especially when we're prepping for competition, is we still progress things in a 3-week pendulum wave, but we kind of alternate them so that it runs in a 6-week block, if you will. So kind of like how we were talking about before the podcast, week A might have max effort lower and max effort upper. During week A, that may look like a squat movement and a horizontal pressing movement. Now, week B is going to be some sort of hip hinge movement for max effort and vertical press for max effort upper. When we go back to week A, -2, run week A for the second time, we're going to go back to those variations. And the goal is to hit about a 5 to 10 pound PR on whatever variations those were. We'll run week A 3 times, alternating with week B, and then we'll rotate all those exercises out and put in new exercises. So for right now, we're actually going to be finishing up next week. What we've been doing was we've been doing cambered bar, parallel box squat for our big squat movement, Cadillac bar or football bar, bench press, working up to 3 rep maxes for both of these for our horizontal press. Our hip hinge movement has been block sumo deadlifts. And then our vertical press has been a pin standing overhead press. Now we're going to run through all of those 3 times, alternating each week. And then we're going to swap all those exercises out. And we're going to move into something, Zercher box squat, traditional floor press with a straight bar, go back to the standard barbell Z press, and then we're going to be pulling sumo deadlifts off the floor. So that's kind of how I structure the max effort work. Within that, because it does take about 6 weeks to run through all those max effort variations, we have 2 3-week pendulum waves for the dynamic effort work. And that's going to look a little bit more traditional to what you would find on westsidebarbell.com, or if you watch any of the YouTube videos that Elite FDS puts out on the conjugate system. Week A is going to be bench press. I like to start out dynamic effort work with new athletes with just straight weight. They don't need bands. They don't need chains. Just learn how to develop the most amount of force possible with straight weight. So we'll run that and progress that for 3 weeks. And then kind of in the middle of that 6-week max effort run that we're taking, we're going to add in a new dynamic effort exercise. So for the first 3 weeks, it was just straight bar bench press, straight weight, no accommodating resistance. For weeks 4, 5, and 6, it's going to be straight bar bench press with mini red bands. So there's a little bit of accommodating resistance on there. Once we run through that, again, we're going to rotate that out to a new exercise every 3 weeks. So that's how we run the max effort and the dynamic effort work. And then on the accessory day, on day 3, that's going to follow something very similar to the dynamic effort work, where it progresses. It has a set number of exercises that we're hitting for 3 weeks straight. And then we're going to rotate more exercises in for weeks 4, 5, and 6. But because we're all prepping for competition, some guys are competing right now. I just had a guy, 2 guys actually compete at IBJJF Worlds. And then the week before, they both competed in super fights. And then 2 weeks before that, they were in Las Vegas, competed at the IBJJF USA Nationals tournament, or Jiu-Jitsu Con tournament. So they've been competing a ton. And so based off of if it's the Friday or the Thursday right before they compete, we may call some audibles and make some changes to that accessory day or that jacked and tan day, just to make sure that they have plenty of time to recover to perform their best on Saturday.
Nice. Okay, guys, that was an excellent breakdown of how to do it. Got to get on the strength matrix. Got to check it out.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, Josh knows what he's talking about. There is no doubt. The only question I have, going back to the dynamic effort portion for the lower body, do you run like 3 weeks in a row of the deadlift and then 3 weeks of the squat, or do you do them both all 6 weeks?
So I've done both, and I've had lots of success with both. But I've been alternating that in the same way we've been doing the max effort alternations. And the reason being is because for some of the guys, we have 2 guys that are still pretty new, and I want them to get enough work in between hip hinging and squatting every week. So if we model it that way, 1 week we'll have max effort squat movement. But then when we do dynamic effort for the lower body, it's going to be a hip hinge. That way they're not going 3 weeks without doing some sort of hip hinge, or 3 weeks without doing some sort of squat, and they lose the ability to do that movement pattern correctly.
That's what I was doing. Even with keeping with the same like squat for the max effort for 3 weeks, I was doing the deadlift for the dynamic effort or the hinge. So, but I like the idea of alternating every other week with the lower body, and I like that. And actually the upper body too, just between horizontal and vertical. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Okay, perfect. That answered my question to the T.
Awesome.
Okay, I will have to reprogram some stuff. So going back to the strength matrix, what is it? It's a service people sign up for, and it encompasses, there's a video, people go to the website, there's a video that sort of explains the program and what's offered on it. And one portion of it is like it's a once a month Zoom call with yourself
Yep.
and other coaches and other participants. What else is on there?
Yeah. So essentially the strength matrix is through Instagram and even meeting people at tournaments and things, I get a lot of questions about how we train with the AM crew, the training footage that I'm posting up with my guys in the gym, and kind of how we're structuring training. And the strength matrix is essentially the virtual version of that. So when you sign up for the strength matrix, it is a monthly membership. You're going to get access to all the different training programs we have to offer, but you're also plugged into the community, which I think is arguably the most important part. Sometimes it's difficult to be the only jiu-jitsu athlete that is at the gym that you train at, the 24 or CalFit, wherever you're going, and not really have the same level of support in the gym that you get when you're at jiu-jitsu. And I feel like I'm very blessed because I do have an awesome support system at jiu-jitsu and at the gym. But sometimes when you step off the mats to focus on strength and conditioning, sometimes you're all alone. So you are entered into a private community of bracket smashers, as I like to say. And within that community, we do Zoom calls each and every single month, making sure that everyone's training is going well. There's time for questions. Sometimes there's going to be guest coaches that are going to come in, or guest training partners that I work with that I feel can add a lot of value and bring a lot of great information to the community. And all this is just making sure that it's a one-stop shop for all the best strength and conditioning resources for grappling athletes. And that was kind of my goal in designing the strength matrix, is making sure that like, hey, like I want to make sure that if anyone, whoever they are, comes in and signs up for the strength matrix, they are going to be a better grappling athlete, guaranteed. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to have all the resources they need to get stronger. They're going to have all the resources they need to be in better condition. There's a huge mindset component to training and the process that you go through as you're prepping to compete in something as difficult as wrestling or jiu-jitsu. So that is a big component as well. There's a private community, and there's Zoom calls with myself and the other coaches within the strength matrix who are coming on over this next year. There's going to be Zoom calls every month. So it's going to be a good time.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's like I said, I already put my application in. I'm going to check this thing out. I don't see any reason why not to. What if I could ask, what's the fee going to be, or what's the range of the fees?
Yeah. I'm not sure when this episode is going to be uploaded, but for anyone that registers or pre-registers, joins a pre-registration group, they get access to exclusive pricing just prior to when it goes live on January 1st. And so their exclusive pricing will be at $19.99 a month. So much less than $1 a day. And then it's still going to be less than $1 a day at $29.99 per month for anyone that signs up after it officially launches on January 1st.
No, that's absolutely affordable. I'm all over it. I guarantee that. I'll guarantee that. And it'll be up today. So it's going to be up on December 16th, 2021. I will put it up today. We'll get it out there. Anything else you want to add to it?
Yeah. I mean, this has been something that I've been holding a little close to my chest over the past couple of months as I was kind of redesigning and rethinking some things that I wanted to provide, and really taking my time with making sure that any grappling athlete that comes in is getting their money's worth and beyond that. There's a famous saying, under promise and over deliver. And I'm a big proponent of that. And I believe in that. And I really just want to make sure that I can help as many grappling athletes as possible. I do believe that my purpose and ultimate calling in life is to set the world on fire with discipline. And with that, what a great avenue to help athletes discover that and develop discipline within themselves by providing them sound strength and conditioning, providing them with sound instruction and coaching and a community of people who are like-minded and really able to understand where they're at. And ultimately, it's going to be so sick when people start traveling to these bigger tournaments like PANS or Worlds, or maybe some of the bigger IBJJF Opens and ADCC trials and things like that. And we're going to be able to meet up with all the other people in the bracket smasher community and be able to see each other really display all the hard work that we're putting in. And ultimately, one of the biggest things that I talk about is decreasing risk of injury. And if I can help even just every athlete that comes in, if I could help them decrease their risk of injury, even just by a little bit, that is like the biggest blessing for them and for me, because we all love jujitsu. We don't want to see jujitsu go anywhere. I highly doubt jujitsu is going anywhere anytime soon. But we all know those training partners that love jujitsu and they don't train as often because they're so banged up and because they're so hurt. And that's probably one of the more heartbreaking aspects of the sport. Same thing as wrestling too. There's a lot of wrestling coaches that are great wrestling coaches, but they can't wrestle just due to years of trauma to the body. So if there's anything that I have to say about it, I want to make sure that I can help every athlete I can win more matches and get injured less.
Perfect. Yeah. Injuries suck. They're horrible.
They're the worst.
Dude, I hate injury. Actually, you see my eye? Oh, it's me.
Shoot.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
I got a thumb punched right in my eye on Saturday morning last week during open mat. And my vision's okay and it doesn't hurt, but I have like this black, like squiggly line in my vision jumping around in my vision. And and the other night I was driving to train. I was driving to train on Monday night to the academy and it was dark. And for whatever reason, every time I turned my head to the right, I got like this little flash in my eye. And that's gone away now. Man. Well, that's going away now. But I still have this freaking black squiggly line in my vision. And it's like my eyes have taken the hardest hit in the last couple. I think those were actually the majority of my injuries lately. I mean, a couple like knee things that happened years ago that'll pop up once in a while. I got to be careful, and that's why I asked you that thing about the knee sleeve thing.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten them yet, but I bought some like high speed knee sleeve for
sick
compressions thing I got. So I'm going to try them out, but
awesome.
Because I actually have to be careful with, like, I can't do the couch, like a couch stretch, what is it? I can't do it. If I go back too far, my knee will pop. If I do like reverse ashi at certain places or a really deep knee slice, then it can sometimes I'll feel it.
Gotcha.
So I have to be really careful with that. But we'll see what goes with that. But yeah, injuries are horrible. I hate them. But for the most part, I can work around it. Now mobility. How do you do mobility every day? Because I know you're a big proponent of it with Kelly Startlett and I have his first book. It's an excellent book and resource. It's a freaking textbook, in my opinion. It might as well be in a university somewhere. But so do you start your day off with mobility? Is that how you do it? Or do you do it after training?
I definitely do mobility work every day. I don't necessarily start off with mobility work every day. Mobility has been, that's kind of what started this whole thing, to be honest, was I was wrestling and I was lifting a lot and having tons of fun. And then I just kept getting injured. And I couldn't find any resource. I just couldn't find any resources that felt like I felt like actually worked and understood the demands of my goals to be a high performance athlete. And a lot of times, and this isn't a knock on the industry, because I think there's a lot of other variables that contribute to this, but sometimes a doctor, a general primary care physician, their best option in the 10 minutes that they have with you is to say, well, just stop doing whatever makes it hurt. And for guys like you and me, that's just not an option. Unless we need to amputate today, I'm probably going to go to jiu-jitsu right after this doctor's appointment is over.
So I'll find a way to work around it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So once I found Kelly Starrett in his first book, Becoming a Supple Leopard, it really changed my mind from how I was looking at seeing an injury and looking at an injury as like a source of pain, and more so as a consequence of a poor movement pattern or a mobility restriction, or as a symptom of some other structural issue that's going on. So once I started to look at the body that way, it completely blew my mind and how I operated as an athlete. Even the techniques that I would do, I changed my technique, how I would wrestle and do all these things. And so with that, it did take a long time for me to develop the mobility I have now, with doing mobility for 20, 30 minutes every day. But once I built that habit and came up with a good foundation of mobility, I at least at a minimum spend 10 minutes working on mobility every day. Sometimes I do all 10 minutes at once. Sometimes, when I'm working every hour, I'll get up and do a few stretches and things like that. But before jiu-jitsu, I mobilize. Before I lift, I mobilize. And I think it's something that is probably the least sexiest thing about being healthy and improving performance on the mat, but arguably one of the most important things. And I know for a lot of the guys that I work with, at first, they didn't really understand like why we were spending 10, 20 minutes before every session rolling out on the cross balls and stuff. But now they've all started to understand and have recognized the benefits of improving position and how much better you feel, not having to worry about getting into deep knee flexion or external rotation of the shoulder for Kimuras, or internal or external rotation in Americana is internal rotation with Kimuras and things like that. So mobility is huge. That's a big component of the strength matrix. I released an instructional earlier this year called the mobility matrix, and that's just included in the strength matrix suite of training programs. So when anyone that joins the program, they get access to all those daily mobility routines, all the entire mobility exercise library. So that way they can really, start strong and finish strong, if you will.
Nice. That's awesome. So I've seen on your Instagram, you put out, like I said, you put out a ton of information. It's like overload sometimes for me, but it's great stuff. And I see you do a lot of different things. And one thing that interests me, or I've always felt is probably a good strength training tool for jiu-jitsu athletes is kettlebells. And I admittedly haven't done it as much as I probably should, because I just like barbell work. But how do you usually put it in? Do you put it in on the jack and tan day, on the accessory day? Do you do it as part of the warm up? Do you consider like a Turkish get up like more of an abdominal exercise? How do you stick it in?
So I've played around with a lot of different kettlebell stuff over the years. And the main reason why I was getting into them is because when I was coaching in the high school weight room for wrestling, they had a ton of kettlebells and only a few barbells. And so it was just the demands of the job that I just had to make do with using more kettlebells than using barbells. And that was a great learning experience because I was able to learn all these different ways and test all these different methods on developing speed and explosive power, while also developing strength, while also developing conditioning, all with one type of training tool. So right now, the way I'm currently using kettlebells is we'll just use it as a way to add load to a certain movement. So we'll hold it when we do our Bulgarian split squats. Sometimes we'll hold kettlebells in the goblet position when we're doing something like a walking lunge or a Cossack squat. I do think it's a great training tool when you start using the bottom up variations. So for those that are watching on the YouTube, but more so just listening, imagine taking a kettlebell and holding the big bell part, holding that above the handle. It's really unstable. It's really difficult to hold on to. And it because it's so unstable, it highlights a lot of compensations and weaknesses throughout other parts of the body. So doing something like just a basic waiter walk with a bottom up kettlebell position, that's really tough. So depending on kind of the need of the training session, I'll mix in kettlebells as opposed to dumbbells. I'd say the biggest fan, or what makes me the biggest fan about kettlebells, is that they're a great leeway point between the benefits of the Olympic lifts and maybe some of the impracticalities of using dumbbells or other methods. So doing things like the kettlebell clean, kettlebell swing, and the kettlebell snatch are some of my favorite ways to develop explosive power. And we do mix those on dynamic effort days. We don't really mix kettlebell work in as its own max effort movement, mainly because I think like sometimes you're just limited by how much you could really strain against a kettlebell because the sizing isn't as precise as adding, literally just 5 pounds to a bar. Sometimes they're making a several kilo jump. And sometimes you can kind of be like, well, that's somewhere between my last warm up and then the next jump up is just impossible. I can't even get the weight started. So I like to use kettlebells for a lot more of secondary exercises and accessory movements, unless we're doing something like dynamic effort work, which is great because we can find the right kettlebell size for that person. They can do their kettlebell snatches really fast and explosive. There's a lot of great stuff from the Phoenix Suns strength and conditioning coach, Corey Schlesinger. We had him out at Super Training Gym a couple years ago, and he was showing us some crazy kettlebell stuff where it basically, like for a long time, all my dynamic effort work with kettlebells was kettlebell swing, kettlebell clean and jerk, kettlebell power clean, kettlebell snatch. And Corey has all these great variations of different split jumps and catches with the kettlebell, passing it between hands. There is a little bit more complexity and advanced nature to the movement. So an athlete definitely does need to meet the prerequisites to be able to do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely gives you a lot more options. And because it's a kettlebell and because the handles are larger, it's a lot easier to handle sometimes for some of those movements as compared to a dumbbell.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. So going back to the dynamic effort example, how would you structure kettlebell, like a snatch or a clean or a swing into dynamic effort? Would you do that along with the other movement, the barbell movement?
Usually not. So depending on what kind of phase of training we're in and what the emphasis is, I'll have the kettlebell be the main movement or have the barbell be the main movement.
Okay.
And I like to still superset those things with some form of plyometric, whether
Right.
that's a med ball throw, med ball slam,
Mhm.
or for the lower body, whether it's some sort of box jump, bounding jump, plyometrics, things like that. So one thing that I've done in the past is I've had athletes do heavy kettlebell swings, superset with box jumps.
Mhm.
That's, very reminiscent of some of the old school texts talking about contrast training where you do heavy deadlifts followed by box jumps. For the upper body, I'm a big fan of the kettlebell snatch. It is a full body movement, but I do think that there is a lot of benefit to being able to get full extension of the arm and kind of punch that kettlebell overhead.
Mhm.
And so some things I've done where the kettlebell snatch is very linear in nature, I'll mix that, superset that with some sort of rotational exercise. So it could be, hit a set of 2 reps of the kettlebell snatch on either arm. And then you're going to grab the medicine ball, do a rotational med ball throw against a wall, 2 to 3 reps per side, take about 30, 45-second rest, and then hit it again. So that way you're training both vertically in a linear plane up and down, and also training in a transverse plane with some rotation.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I agree with you about the max effort part about the kettlebells. It's like the only thing I could think of would be like a max. Well, I guess you could do anything max effort, it would just look weird. But it would be like the Turkish get up. But even that, it's like a whole body movement. So it's like, what are you really gonna, how are you gonna really categorize that? So
I will say this. I will say this though. You may bring up a great point that anything can be max effort. I have done this before as just kind of a way to like break up the monotony sometimes, where at the end of a training cycle, we've done max effort work, and max effort work was just a certain exercise for reps.
Yeah.
Whether that's maximum amount of reps with no time cap, or give them a specific time cap and so many reps they can get. We've done this with like crazy variations of push-ups and just see how many push-ups you can get. We've done this with kettlebell stuff. It's like, hey, how many kettlebell swings can you get in 2 minutes? That's your max effort exercise for the day. So it may not look like the traditional, straining through a big floor press or straining through to lock out on a deadlift or something, but there are some fun max effort variations that I forgot about with kettlebells.
Yeah, there's also Joe DeFranco used to put it in his West Side for Skinny Bastards program. He had a thing where you could do like a max amount of reps with bench press with like a set amount of weight. So you do like 95, 135, 185, or 225, and you just try to get your max reps. So that's a good way too, I think. It's something I need to start. I've always thought about doing it more often. I've done it in the past, but I need to do it more often. I think I like the idea of sometimes doing max effort work with like you said, like as many reps as possible in an AMRAP instead of just doing a 1 to 5 rep. But usually I stick around 3 reps though. I like the 3 rep range. I don't know why.
Nice.
So, and just to confirm, is Corey Schlesinger?
Schlesinger.
Okay.
I'm not even going to try to spell it. It's if you just look up the head strength and conditioning coach for the Phoenix Suns,
okay,
that's gonna be your guy.
Okay.
He's been on a lot of great podcasts recently. He was on Table Talk with Dave Tate. He was on Power Athlete Radio with John Welborn. I believe he was also on Phil DeRue's podcast. I'm not sure if that was recently, like within this month, but maybe it was earlier sometime this year. So yeah, there's definitely some great stuff with him.
Awesome. Well, consider me a customer. I'm going to jump all over that when I get the opportunity to sign up. I'm
awesome,
looking forward to it. It could be a good program.
Yes, sir.
I will obviously do it. And I'm, like I told you before the interview, I'm thinking about doing like tracking my progress for 3 months. And then maybe I'll do like my own, like breakdown of what my success was, as an old geezer. and go from there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, well, hey, Josh, people can reach you on Facebook at Joshua Settlage, or you're on Instagram at Joshua Settlage, one word. And the website for the Strength Matrix is thestrengthmatrix.com.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Yep.
And I still owe you a Batman drawing. I have tried to draw that freaking thing twice, and I almost had something the other day, and then I went crazy with the cross hatching and just effed it all up, and I hate it. So
no worries, bro.
I'm still
You're
working
good.
on my.
You're good.
I've got some new technique down. I've been studying more of my drawing, and
Okay.
I think I'm going to come out with something pretty cool. So hopefully next week or so I'll have something for you. It might just be pencil. I've got this thing where I did ink for years, and I really don't like it as much. Like you know how you go through just with anything in life, like even jiu-jitsu, maybe you prefer no gi for a while or over gi or whatever. Yeah. It's like even with drawing for me, like I did an all pencil, like a Wolverine. I copied a David Finch drawing he did on YouTube. Okay. I just followed along and I copied it and I put it up on my Instagram. Actually, one of my other guests got it.
Nice.
It was Eugene Sosek, who's with Nick Albin, who does the Jiu-Jitsu podcast.
Yeah,
he has it.
Oh, that's great.
But it came out really nice. I like the way the pencil looks. So I think I'm going to start doing more pencils. You might just get a really nice pencil drawing.
All right,
we'll go from there. But I'll get it to you. I swear
Sounds
to God,
good, brother.
I'll get it to you. So, okay. Well, hey, thanks for coming on again, Josh. It was fun. And if anybody has any questions, you want to make comments or ask additional questions about programming or whatever, throw them in the comment section. Again, Josh, we reached it on Instagram at Joshua Settlage, and great resource. Take advantage of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Craig. Okay. This is great as always.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.